It was my first campaign. I made a 7-foot-tall tiefling barbarian named Blurg. He was big, dumb, and strong as hell. I was having a blast playing with my friends, and one day Blurg accidentally ate a blue mushroom. He had what the DM referred to as magic poisoning. So my barbarian had to go to the temple and learn with the 10 monks for 10 weeks in-game. So I rolled a new character to play as until Blurg came back. About 5 or 6 months went by. I was playing with my new character when we went to this town where a massive combat tournament was happening. We were there to meet with some rebels to meet their champion, and guess who it was? Blurg! Not only did I understand the champion, I also get to play with my barbarian again, and he's gained like 4 levels since the last time I played. As soon as he realized he wouldn't be the center of attention, the Spotlight Hog Sorcerer decided to bust in. I should be in the tournament. I'm the strongest. I challenge Blurg for his place as champion. The DM straight up told him that he wrote this part into the campaign to reintroduce my character. He kept pressing on until I agreed, just so he'd quit whining. We start fighting, and I almost kill him on my first turn. Then the sorcerer's turn came up. He flew up into the air and just spammed fireballs until I died, because I couldn't fly. So I got to play 1 turn with the character I waited months to play again. I also spent the next 2 sessions basically watching the Spotlight Hog have fun battling in a tournament that was meant for my character that I didn't get to play again for another month. All because he couldn't stand to see someone else get attention. Obviously, this is the Spotlight Hog's fault, but hey DM, if you think the sorcerer shouldn't be challenging the barbarian, you could just not let him do that? Or you could, like, give the barbarian a rock to throw or something. You'd be surprised what a good boulder can do to a flying target. Far from the worst thing on here, and frankly, that's part of what makes me so angry about this. We've got a group that's been playing D&D for a few years off and on at this point. The main conflict in this case is between me and a power gamer, but this group includes our respective partners as well. In the past, he's been manageable, like constantly pushing the boundaries, but not to the point of it being a huge problem. For most of the time we've played, my wife has DM'd, and she's new enough to the game that when he asks her for a specific rule variant he likes, or asks her to rework his character sheet / change his class for the 3rd time in the same campaign, she just rolls with it. Why not? We're all just here to have fun. It is a constant annoyance though. His turn in combat takes 5 times longer than everyone else's because he has to think of the absolute most optimal course of action, something he doesn't seem to start doing until his turn begins. As a fellow player though, he's fine-ish. When I take a turn on DMing campaigns of my own when my wife is busy though, it gets difficult. I tend to like low magic, low level campaigns, which naturally leave a lot less room for him to be notably cooler than everyone else and win D&D. Last time I did a campaign, I ran Saltmarsh and I asked people to pick classes and races from the core player's handbook. He came back with a variant elf he found somewhere that could breathe underwater. I asked him why he went outside the player's handbook, and his response was that, well, elves are in the player's handbook, and this is a type of elf. So yeah. This time around, I was very upfront. Okay, human characters only. No restrictions on class though, 5th level. Everything was going fine until someone asked how we're going to do ability score. I said standard array, mainly because it's easy. He asked if I was okay with rolling instead, and when I confirmed I wanted people to just use standard array, he said that that basically killed all the excitement he had for his character. I know that it's impossible for me to confirm he cheats on those dice rolls, but I'm pretty sure he cheats on those dice rolls. He refused to explain how it ruined his fun, and when pressed, he basically stated that he hadn't pushed back against any of the other things, these things basically being the small description of the campaign I wanted to run, so he felt like he deserved a small concession. I told him I was going to be making tons of decisions in the campaign, many of them pulled directly out of my ass, all in the service of trying to make a fun, adventurous world for everyone to play in, and that picking one of the default options from the player's handbook for stat creation was among the most trivial ones, so the idea that I was going to have to barter with him for his cooperation was not at all the tone I was interested in setting or following. I asked him if he was still interested in playing in the sort of game I described, a question that he refused to answer. In the end, the campaign just got cancelled. Not enough players who weren't him or his girlfriend to really justify playing without him, but I'd rather play later with people actually excited to play than suffer through trying to justify all my choices to someone just looking to break the game anyway. Power gaming is fine, build crafting is great, but the mentality that this guy has goes beyond that. This isn't just about build crafting a cool character. This is about trying to win Dungeons and Dragons, and also maybe cheating. I don't see another reason why he wants to roll so badly, because remember, when you're rolling your stats, you could get bad stats. You can get stats that don't fit with your build in any way at all. Like, that is completely possible and even likely in many cases. But yeah, you don't win D&D by beating stuff in combat. You win D&D when you create a cool story with your friends. And of course, you can absolutely do that when you're build crafting a character, but if you're going into Dungeons and Dragons with the mentality that I need to win under any circumstance, that mentality can result in a game that just falls apart very, very quickly. It can result in an antagonistic game, an antagonistic experience, not just with your DM, but with your other players, because often that sort of mentality leads to the combat equivalent of spotlight hogging and main character syndrome, which we just saw in the intro. Anyway, yeah, not good. I'm glad that this campaign didn't go through, though. It probably wouldn't have been very fun for anyone involved. I was close to a friend in high school, mainly because we took the same classes. After graduation, we lost contact. Rest of my friend group eventually got back together to play TTRPGs. The group was roleplay and story-oriented. We did not exclude Friend on purpose, but Friend only liked writing stories and not playing games. We thought she would not be interested, yet when Friend heard we were playing, she wanted to join. What followed was Friend being incompatible with the rest of the table, and occasionally overstepping social boundaries. No one wanted to say anything about it. In the first half of the campaign, Friend wanted to play a cat person, a girl with cat ears who acted like a cat. I am sure that's fine in the right kind of table, but no one else in our table was into this. DM was new and didn't want to say no. DM offered to us partaking in world building. Friend took the offer to create her character's home province, while disregarding DM setting. In short, we got Japan, populated by cats, in the middle of Europe. We also got a whopping 20 noble clans in one tiny village, in a tiny island where nobility was supposed to be overthrown. DM is aware that this was also a mistake, but didn't know any better back then. Friend's character was a generic Mary Sue, from a family of generic Mary Sues. In her long backstory, she naturally slayed a red dragon at level 1. DM had her tone this down at least. Friend wrote an erotic fan fiction about her character and sent it to DM. She never once asked DM's permission. Friend also had a kind of script for her character's story. Story goals are great, but she was also upset when there were obstacles to overcome. She ignored plot hooks given to her if they contained hardships. More than that, she was upset when her actions had consequences. A big example was when our group needed to access a temple to the god of sacrifice. Only those who made a personal sacrifice could enter. Her character sacrificed all memories of her lover. Before she did this, it was made clear she could never get her memories back. Afterwards, she was upset because her character could no longer have a happy ending. In roleplay, she began asking extremely meta questions in hopes of them leading to her regaining her memories. She was also hostile towards me because my character was the only one in the group who didn't lose memories. My character gave up her dominant hand. We eventually had convinced the lover to give Friend's character, now a stranger, a second chance because Friend was so set on them being back together. Friend was extremely jealous to be a ranger in a group of full casters. She was offered a class change, which she refused. Primarily, she was jealous about high damage spells I took from my sorcerer. She became convinced sorcerers were overpowered in 5th edition. She was also jealous about the stories unfolding for our characters. When I agreed to become champion to a forgotten deity, her character suddenly wanted to be a champion too. Previously, her character had been non-religious. Yet, while I worked to revive my deity's religion, she asked DM for freebies, and on occasion berated her deity for not taking action. Friend was also a murder hobo. In combat, she got angry when she didn't hit the enemy. She never cooperated with us in combat because she wanted to win alone. She also perceived our characters as ultimate good, and she wanted to shoot everyone who was not good. She was upset when I stopped her from shooting people, including a literal... Damn, this is the most hardcore kawaii cat person I've ever heard of. When we finished one story arc, DM needed a break. We talked about it a lot about how everyone could improve. Friend said she wanted to learn roleplay. She did change for her next arc, but it wasn't all for better. We lost one player because she couldn't commit to another year of Dungeons & Dragons. Friend suggested a replacement, someone only she knew. Newbie was a teen. While we were all young adults, DM wasn't sure this was a good fit. I foolishly suggested we should give it a try. Yet Newbie never talked. She didn't answer when we engaged her. She didn't pay attention. On occasion, she did something random and funny. Newbie left the group peacefully after agreeing that D&D was not her thing. Friend said to us that she found Newbie's behavior frustrating too. This bit is important because ultimately, Friend was kicked for the exact same behavior. Fast forward, a big red dragon from Friend's backstory has returned. Friend was not even eager to confront it, but I suggested we should go. We were level 15 at this point, so I teleported us over ASAP. The province was on fire, but Friend shrugged. While we started saving civilians, Friend saw the dragon and was invigorated. She told no one. She ditched the party and ran to 1v1 the dragon. She met that previously betrayed lover on her way. They were both killed in 2 rounds of combat. Resurrection was extremely difficult, for heroes only, of course. After a long talk, we resurrected Friend's character because she was living in a world of sunk cost fallacy. She literally said, "If I don't get my character back, I will have wasted 2 years for nothing." Our cleric, god of death, refused to resurrect the lover. She said she had broken the rules enough already. For the rest of the campaign, Friend was obsessed with bringing the lover back. She would do anything, including evil acts. It was a cool character development, except she got angry out of character every time we pointed out that her character is becoming evil. Friend had some okay roleplay moments, but more often she liked to do things for shock value. Often she devalued others for this end, such as she went around telling people about my character's illegitimate child with a politician because she found it amusing? She also once watched my character be paralyzed magically and then coup de grace by a stranger. Moments later, she walked away and left my character in a puddle of her own blood. She had many rounds to react, but this was one of the times she chose not to metagame to help. Whenever I said my character no longer trusts her character, she took it as IRL hostility between us. I didn't know how difficult it was for her to differentiate between character and player until it was far too late. Admittedly, I added to this negative mood at the table. Towards the end of the campaign, I was not looking forward to playing with Friend. I came to the table in a bad mood and got annoyed at small things. Through the campaign, several times, we as players discussed what was going wrong and what could be done. Every time, it seemed like things were alright, and they weren't. When we ended, Friend revealed the campaign had been so upsetting to her that she cried for months after games. No one knew because she lied about being alright. Now that we know the whole story, we talked again, and at this point we should have concluded that Friend was not fit to play with us, but we didn't. This is Editing Crispy coming back after the story's completion, and look, this story never talks about this again. That is completely glossed over, and I'm gonna say right now, if somebody is crying after Dungeons & Dragons, they need to take a break. Look, you're gonna have some sorrowful moments in D&D, but that's clearly not what we're talking about here. This is not good. Take a step back if D&D is not fun anymore. It should be enjoyable, not traumatizing. Of course, it could be the friend being manipulative, but that's the cynic's view of it. So anyway, moving on. I took over as DM and invited everyone from the previous game. I don't even know why I was so naive still. Friend was impossible to work with. She disregarded the lore I gave her. She tried to disregard my homebrew races and character creation after I explicitly explained she cannot take anything from the player's handbook. She refused to make a backstory, for which I only asked 1 paragraph. She did not want to be a cleric, but the party had no healer, so she offered to be one. She never enjoyed cleric, but never healed anyone but herself. I asked her time and time again if she was happy with her character, and if she wanted to rather swap for her original idea, a monk. She kept lying that she always wanted to be a cleric until I showed her screenshots of her original character plan. I also discovered that she cheated by not marking used spell slots and swapping prepared spells during in-game days. After about 10 sessions, she just didn't participate in the story, and sometimes she didn't even pay attention. I started asking if Friend was okay. After a lot of back and forth, she admitted she was upset by something that happened in the game. I tried asking how I can improve the game and what I should change. She never answered. After some more weeks, I asked if she enjoyed playing at all. She said she doesn't care about D&D. At this point, it just became clear she was coming to the table to hang out, while we were super story focused. She had realized way back that D&D wasn't for her, but she just didn't want to be excluded by her friends. I was very tired. I had 2 options, either cancel my game, or she goes. I chose the latter. I told her the reasons, including that she was not participating and was disruptive at the table. Now, she was very upset that she was getting the boot for the same reasons that previously had been valid for booting someone else. She tried to argue I was not a true friend because I kicked her. I told her that a true friend would not force herself to sit through an activity she thought was boring every week and drag down everyone else's experience. Friend did not talk to me for a couple of days because she thought I was terminating our friendship. Then we sort of talked it out. We hung out, doing some other stuff for a while. Then, as one naturally would, we found a replacement player. The situation imploded again. Friend had been holding a grudge, and now she came back screaming about how she was betrayed and replaced. We tried to explain to her that this was not true. She asked me to define our friendship. At this point, I just said, I've not talked to you outside of D&D after we graduated. We're just acquaintances. She had, however, thought we were very close friends somehow, and things just got worse after that. Our discussion ended up with her walking out for good. Ever since, I've honestly had fun playing D&D. I have never read a more high school TM horror story in my entire RPG horror story reading experience. Holy hell. I know that the OP said this happened after graduation, but still, this story just sucks for everyone involved. Friend was clearly not having fun and just wanted to keep in touch with her friends. You know, after high school, sometimes friends sort of fade away from your life, and I guess she really did not want that to happen. And while I can definitely look back on my own high school years and sympathize with the plight of this friend, this is not the avenue to do it. This is actually the way you break down friendships, as was clear by the conclusion of this story. I'm not gonna talk about the friend thing too much because I'm not a therapist, but look, D&D wise, this isn't great. I mean, we've had murder hobos, we've had main character syndrome, we've had people who are inattentive, and this player is all of that wrapped into one. The DM set up a great battle map across his entire dining room table, probably 60 squares long and 30 wide. It was an intricately designed city scene with buildings and carts and market stalls, plenty of places for PCs and enemies to ambush, climb walls, sneak around, find cover, set haystacks on fire. It was going to be a great combat and a great start to this new campaign. The player characters' minis were set up on the south end. From far across the cityscape, we could see monsters in the city square at the other end of the map. Even sprinting, it would take us several rounds to get there. But once initiative was rolled, that's exactly what we started doing. One round later, and 60 feet closer, an NPC, who was Dritz in all but name, dropped from a rooftop near the town square and started hacking away at the monsters. The DM rolled his monsters' attacks. They all missed, and resolved and narrated Britz's attacks, and they all hit in cinematic and gory fashion. Stunned, the players, each on our turns, moved 12 squares closer and did nothing else. There was nothing else we could do. We were told that the city didn't offer any line of sight to the combat. Wait, how did we know about the combat if we just rolled initiative? We can't see it. So missiles and magic would do us no good. All we could do was approach on foot, slowly. Our turns were over, and Fritz resumed his vicious 3 attacks per round onslaught of the beasts. One monster managed to get a hit in, which served only to show how heroic the Dark Elf Ranger truly was to keep fighting alone against such overwhelming odds. But he soldiered on, masterfully taking out his foes, while the PCs, oh, remember them? Impotently walked towards the fight. Another round, another few inches closer. Once it became clear we'd eventually reach the, self-congratulatory combat, the DM had us roll occasional dexterity checks. Failure meant losing a round of forward motion due to a twisted ankle or an ox cart overturning in front of us. Because, of course, as soon as the first player character managed to get to the town square, 5 rounds later, Schmitz had dispatched all but one of the monsters. I think that first player character got to swing a sword, and another got to fire a crossbow bolt or throw a cantrip or something, and that was it. The monsters were defeated, and we got to watch the DM play D&D with himself. Ah yes, a DM with main character syndrome, the likes of which we haven't seen since, I believe, the airship story. This one sucks even more though. At least that guy had a cast of DM NPCs. This guy just has one, and they seem very generic. There's nothing wrong with basing a character off another character. Let's make that very, very clear. We've all done that. Hell, many of us have just taken other characters, and you know what? That's great. However, when there's this much self-flattery involved with it as well, it really can bring down the mood of a game. It's a shame. This could have been an epic combat by the sounds of it. Instead, the party had to deal with very boring hijinks while the DM just narrated how cool he is. Great. In the ancient times before COVID, I was part of a D&D group that consisted of friends and acquaintances that I'd made at a community college I attended. We all had interest in playing D&D, but didn't know anyone who knew the rules in depth and wanted to run a game for us. That all changed when we met Carla. Not a real name, but let's roll with it. Carla had just moved out from state and was looking to put a game together. Since she had way more experience than any of us, we all jumped at the opportunity to have her run a game for us. We generally tried to meet at least 3 days a week, since most of us were aloof 20-something-year-olds with way too much free time on our hands. At first, things were cool. She was very patient with teaching us how to play, very knowledgeable about the rules, and everyone was having a great time with her first campaign. This all started to change about a month in. Carla had posted a message in the group chat that went something along the lines of, "We need to start pitching in a little bit of cash before each session," since she was taking in a sizable amount of time where she was missing out on potential opportunities to make money. At the time, we were actually all behind it. She was taking 3 to 6 hours out of her day to run games for us, while also attending her classes, so we were more than down to show her a little bit of appreciation. It was agreed that we would each pitch in $10, which added up to $50 a session for her. I'd say for a few weeks everything was fine. However, since I was an unemployed art major whose only source of income was taking commissions, it was a bit hard for me to keep up with the pace of paying $10 3 times a week. It was a little much for me since taking commissions wasn't exactly lucrative or consistent at that time in my life. So one session I just couldn't pay. But I had raided my freezer and pantry and brought a bunch of snacks as a way for making up for it, and even apologized beforehand. But that night, I literally could do nothing when it came to rolling dice. It didn't matter how high I rolled, I couldn't hit anything, and none of my skill checks passed. This was despite some of the other people in our group rolling lower than what I had rolled. After that, she reached out to me asking why I thought I was above paying, and when I explained the situation and said I would get to her next session, she said something along the lines of, "Well, good, maybe next time you'll be able to hit something," which pretty much confirmed that she was making sure my rolls didn't matter. Now that was a massive red flag, but at the time, I felt like an asshole, like I wasn't coming through for someone that was counting on me. After that, she started to get more pushy. There was one incident where she ordered a pizza and expected us to cover it, and then didn't share any of it. She would make a list of snacks she wanted at the session, and who was expected to bring them. If anyone didn't bring them or just forgot, coincidentally, none of their roles or actions seemed to matter that session, and we get some sort of passive-aggressive post in the chat afterwards. At this point, a lot of people in the group were starting to get fed up. But none of us wanted to be the first one to leave the group, so we mostly just stuck to venting in private. Around this time, Carla started working for a certain multi-level marketing makeup company and informed us that before sessions, we could buy something from her selection of products or pay $10, but we had to get her an appointment with someone we knew who might be interested in buying some off her. Sounds stupid? We thought so too. I remember myself and one of the other girls in the group buying one overpriced product just to be polite, but everyone else just wanted to give her the $10. That led to her freaking out on everyone, throwing us out of her apartment and surprisingly not saying anything on the group chat for a few days. When she did return, it was to berate us for her missing her quota for the week, how we weren't doing enough, and that there wouldn't be any more sessions until we helped fix the problem that we had made. We, shockingly, didn't want our money and fun being held hostage by someone who treated us like her own personal wallet because she wanted to chase after a pink Mercedes that she was never going to be able to get. So we all collectively said screw it and blocked her at the same time, with some of us deciding to tell her off before doing so. There was a confrontation on campus which led to her being escorted off campus after spitting in my friend's face, but after that, we moved on, started running little one-offs on homebrew campaigns before we added a much cooler DM who didn't expect us to pay. There's nothing wrong with paid D&D in itself. There are plenty of great DMs out there who run perfectly reasonable games for perfectly reasonable rates. But this is completely different. This group is essentially, like the OP said, being held hostage by somebody who's trying to extort them for money. Look, $30 a week, that's a lot. I could not imagine asking for $30 a week for Dungeons & Dragons. I felt guilty after asking my party for $30 just in total for the VTT that I'm running the game off of. I could not imagine having the gall to ask players for $30 a week, and then on top of that, ask players to be a part of a multi-level marketing scheme so that you could get a promotion in a morally questionable business strategy. I'm not going to talk about MLMs, that's not what this channel is about. Other people have done much better jobs covering the situations. However, yeah, this just absolutely sucks. Not an example of what I'd call good paid D&D, or good D&D in general. And that is where we're going to end today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out the Roll for Insight podcast, where I interview DMs, YouTubers, artists, writers, etc., and ask them about all things D&D. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, give me money, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. That's dislike, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.